Have you ever seen a trade that instantly loses the game? Here, Black thought they were simplifying by taking the knight on e3, but this is a catastrophic blunder. By moving their knight from d5, Black accidentally opened the entire d file. Suddenly, White's rook on d1 is staring directly at the Black rook on d7, perfectly coordinating with the White queen on e6. Both of these powerful pieces are now ganging up on that single square. White strikes immediately, with the rook taking the rook on d7. Now Black has a huge problem. They must recapture to keep the material balance. Black takes back with their other rook. And here comes the absolute hammer blow. The queen captures the rook. A spectacular queen sacrifice. But wait, didn't White just hang their most powerful piece? Absolutely not. The Black queen on d8 is completely paralyzed. Let us look at what happens if Black gets greedy and accepts the sacrifice. If the Black queen takes the White queen, they completely abandon their defense of the back rank. This allows White to slide their rook all the way up to a8. The rook delivers a crushing check to the Black king, who is trapped behind his own pawns. Black's only legal response is to retreat the queen to d8 to block the check. But White simply captures the queen with the rook, delivering a beautiful back rank checkmate. Since the queen cannot be taken, White simply wins a full rook and the game in this short but brilliant tactical sequence. Beautiful coordination. White pushes their pawn forward to d6, trying to wedge it into Black's position and create some chaos. But this is a colossal blunder. Notice how Black's queenside attack is already brewing. If we highlight the Black queen on c7, you can see she is staring directly down the semi-open c-file. Black immediately punishes White's mistake by unleashing the stunning knight jump to b3, checking the White king. This is an absolutely brilliant sacrifice. The knight boldly leaps right into the crosshairs of two White pawns, executing a vicious fork against the king and the queen. So, what happens if White tries to take this pesky knight? The pawn on c2 cannot capture it because it is completely paralyzed. As you can clearly see, the Black queen pins that pawn directly to the king, making the capture totally illegal. What if White captures with the a-pawn instead? By playing the pawn to b3, White fatally opens up the entire a-file for the Black rook. Black takes full advantage by sliding the rook down to a1, delivering a beautiful and unstoppable checkmate. Since White cannot safely accept the knight sacrifice with either pawn, the king is forced to run for its life. The king slides over to b1 to step out of the check. But now Black simply cashes in on the fork, playing the knight to d2, snatching the White queen with yet another check. Black secures a massive material advantage and easily wins the game from here. Never move your pieces without checking what lines you might be opening. Before this move, Black was up 2 pawns and enjoying a completely winning advantage. But retreating the bishop to g6 is a tragic blunder. Let us see exactly why. When the bishop was on d3, it acted as a perfect shield, blocking the center file. But by moving to g6, that file is blown wide open. Suddenly, White's rook on d1 is staring straight down the board at Black's rook on d8. You might think, so what? The Black rook is firmly defended by the king. But White unleashes a beautiful deflection tactic. White sacrifices the bishop, grabbing a pawn with a check to drag the Black king away. If Black tries to decline the sacrifice and hide by sliding the king over to b8, White simply grabs the rook on d8 with check anyway, completely crushing Black. So Black is essentially forced to accept the sacrifice. The king captures the bishop on b7. But look at what just happened. By taking the bait, The king has completely abandoned the defense of its own rook. Now white calmly plays rook takes on d8. By giving up a bishop to win a rook and a pawn, white just flipped a totally lost position into a completely winning endgame. This is a brilliant reminder to always look at the entire board and check for newly opened lines before you commit to moving a piece.
When your opponent threatens checkmate, you have to be incredibly careful how you defend. Just a moment ago, white was threatening a deadly checkmate on the h8 square, so black pushes the pawn to g6. This attacks white's queen and simultaneously unblocks the long diagonal, so their own queen can step in and defend the mate. It looks like a very clever defensive resource, but it is actually a huge blunder that loses immediately. White has a beautiful geometric tactic that wins a full piece. First, white plays a forcing check, sliding the queen right into the corner. The black king has only one legal square and is forced to step aside to f8. And now, the killer blow. White brings the queen back to h6, delivering another check. This is a perfect king and rook fork. The queen attacks the king and x-rays all the way down the board to grab the hanging rook on d2. Whether black blocks the check with the queen, bringing it to g7, white just scoops up the free piece. Or steps out of the check with the king, moving up to e7, the result is exactly the same. White captures the rook, securing a decisive advantage and winning the game in short order. A simple but very satisfying combination. Never grab a pawn without checking for tactics.
Here, black counts the attackers and defenders, deciding the pawn is free real estate. After the black knight captures, it looks menacing, sitting proudly on this outpost and pressuring white's kingside. But this is a massive blunder. See if you can spot white's crushing response. Boom! It's a devastating fork. The white knight jumps in with a check, attacking the king and simultaneously hitting the rook on the edge of the board. Now, at first glance, it looks like black can simply capture this pesky knight with their queen to solve all their problems. The black queen stares right at it. But look closely. This knight is perfectly defended. The white queen provides backup from the center of the board, completely locking down the square. Let's see what happens if black tries to dodge the check and save their queen. If the king slides into the corner, white simply grabs the rook with the knight. If black recaptures the knight with their pawn, white then scoops up black's remaining knight with the rook. This sequence leaves white up a whole rook and completely dominating the endgame. Because of this miserable outcome, black's most resilient choice to deal with the fork is actually to bite the bullet and give up the queen entirely. Black sacrifices the queen for the knight, but white gladly recaptures. Winning a queen for a minor piece is a massive material advantage, and this game is completely over. White will cruise to an easy victory from here. Sometimes, minor pieces and pawns are all you need to build the perfect cage. Black steps up the board, bringing their king to g4. But they have just walked blindly into a beautiful mating net. Let's see how white coordinates their pieces to finish the game. The sequence starts with a fantastic knight jump to e5, delivering a powerful check. This active knight immediately takes away the g4 square, preventing the king from staying put. Notice how the white king on h2 even chips in by guarding the h3 escape square. With danger all around and the pawn cutting off the side, black is left with exactly one legal response. The king is forced to retreat to h5. Now, everything is in place
for the final blow. White's bishop on g2 is perfectly positioned to slide up the long diagonal and deliver the knockout punch. Bishop to f3, and that is checkmate. Look at this gorgeous geometric trap. The black king is completely boxed in and has absolutely nowhere to go. Let us admire the wall White has built. The knight on e5 safely guards g4. The pawn on h4 perfectly controls g5. And the other knight on e7 has the g6 square completely covered. This small squad of minor pieces creates an inescapable wall. A truly stunning finish. When you are up a full rook in a late game scramble, the absolute last thing you want to do is blunder a checkmate in one. But that is exactly what happens here. White was in check and tried to run, but stepping the king to d2 is a game-ending mistake. Let us look at the resulting position. White has a huge material advantage, but their king is completely paralyzed. The black queen on b3 is an absolute monster. She slices across the board, taking away crucial escape squares, c3, d3, and e3. She also covers the vital c2 square right next to the white king. To make matters worse, the white rook on e2 awkwardly blocks its own king from sliding to safety. With 0 safe squares available, it is black to play and finish the game in a single stroke. The black rook drops to d1, delivering a beautiful checkmate. The white king cannot capture the rook because it is perfectly defended by the queen, aiming all the way from b3 down the diagonal. The king is entirely boxed in, trapped in a cage of black's attacking pieces and white's own poorly placed rook. A tragic blunder by white, but a crisper, punishing finish for black that proves material means nothing if your king is caught in a mating net. 2 queens are better than 1, right? Not today. White pushes their pawn to the final rank and promotes to a queen, feeling completely unstoppable with double queens on the board in this wild middle game. The new queen on b8 joins her sister on e8. But white has completely missed black's massive threats. Can you spot the forced checkmate for black? It starts with an absolutely spectacular queen sacrifice. The black queen smashes into g3, capturing a pawn and checking the white king. Is in deep trouble. Let us look at what happens if they try to refuse the sacrifice. First, if they try to block the check by bringing the bishop back to g2, they get checkmated instantly when the black queen captures that very bishop, delivering a brutal checkmate on g2. What if the white king tries to run away instead? Stepping to f1 is just as fatal. Black simply drops the hammer with the queen moving to f2, and that is another instant checkmate. So white has absolutely no choice but to accept the gift and capture the magnificent queen with their h-pawn. But taking this queen unlocks a hidden beast. The advanced black pawn becomes an absolute monster. The pawn pushes forward to h2, putting the king in check. The king is completely trapped. Blocked by its own rook on e1 and the bishop on h1, the king is forced to step to the only legal square, f1. Now, watch the incredible coordination of black's pieces. The light-squared bishop on g4 swings into action, preparing to drop back to h3 to deliver a devastating check. The bishop moves, and white is forced to block this attack with their own bishop moving it to g2. But it is entirely too late. The trap is perfectly sprung. Black delivers the final crushing blow. Supported by the mighty rook slicing across the second rank, black is ready to strike. The black bishop captures on g2. Checkmate! What a beautiful variation of Morphy's mate, perfectly coordinating the bishop and the active rook to weave an inescapable mating net.